So let's talk about you and let's talk about your journey on YouTube. So tell everyone first the majority of the things you cover.
All right. So I started my channel 2.5 years ago. And at the time, I can talk about this later. At the time, I was an English professor. And so I started the YouTube channel because I didn't know what I wanted to really do with it, but I was interested in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation. And so at that point, we were about a year out from the trial. And so I started covering that, definitely Team Johnny. And I would say about 3 weeks after I started that channel and started covering the Depp stuff, the Marilyn Manson scandal broke. And so you had that day in February 2021 when Evan Rachel Wood and a bunch of other women came out online same time in a kind of coordinated hit against him. And so I started covering that because I thought that was interesting. And he's Johnny Depp's best friend. I don't know if people know that or not. And so I started covering that. And then I just kind of, I guess you could say I sort of acquired a reputation as a kind of a culture warrior for falsely accused men falsely accused of MeToo scandals, infractions. But I do other stuff on my channel. I have philosophy videos, I have film analysis, and so it's not something that I intended to do, but that's what it's evolved to be. And of course, there are so many Me Too scandals now.
It seems to be an epidemic.
Yes, so I mean, it's working for me. I guess I'll just, as long as there are false accusations and Me Too scandals, then I'll be making the videos.
Hold off on the Tony. Actually, read that one, but after this, guys, we're going to hold off on the $20. We will read the $20 super chats after this portion. Go for it.
Tony Guevara just said, "Read."
There it is. There it is. Oh, I'm gonna like it. I forgot. I can like the super chats now. I keep forgetting you can do that now, which is just weird.
So we covered Johnny Depp when the trial was going on. It was only like an hour away from here, actually, in Fairfax County.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, since we're sympathetic to Johnny Depp's side of the issue, it's more interesting to ask you, like, why are you Team Johnny?
So I could give you a number of reasons, but for me, and I think for the majority of Johnny Depp supporters, it comes down to those leaked audio tapes between him and Amber Heard. And they ended up being entered into trial. So if people watch the trial, they might remember this. But there were conversations that were taped between Amber and Johnny. Apparently they would record their conversations because they were having difficulty like in figuring out who said what. I mean, we all understand that, right?
Oh, so this wasn't surreptitious
No,
recording.
She knew it was being recorded. She knew.
That makes it even crazier.
It is. It's crazy because
I didn't know that.
Yes.
They were told to do this by what? Like a couples therapist or something?
Yes, it was a part of their therapy.
Between that and Jonah Hill, these therapists are just ruining everybody's lives.
Right?
These therapists don't know what they're doing.
If your relationship's on the rocks, maybe don't go to couples therapy.
Okay, maybe it's just LA therapists, right? Like they've got such an abundance of clients out there that they just tell them whatever they need to tell them. So you were covering Johnny Depp,
right?
And then of all of these cases, which one do you think is obviously the Johnny Depp one? I think is the biggest right now.
Right.
What is the most shocking revelation that you've seen from one of these cases?
Well, I think that the Marilyn Manson case, I know it's complicated for people because of his public image, and there are a lot of people who are like, I'm not into that, not into him. But when you actually dig into it and look at what has happened to him and the hoax, the levels to which Evan Rachel Wood and her co-conspirators went to frame him, it's astounding. So I think probably the most astounding aspect of the Manson case is the fact that Evan Rachel Wood and her girlfriend at the time and co-conspirator faked an FBI letter. They actually typed up a fake FBI letter for her to enter into a custody dispute that she was having with the actor Jamie Bell. So there's a whole dimension to this Manson stuff that actually is not even really related to Manson. She also was basically trying to withhold Jamie Bell's son from him, and of course she recently lost custody of her child.
And still tried to like turn the narrative on that in the media.
Tried to say it was Manson's fault.
She's on the run from Marilyn Manson's secret agents in Nashville.
That's right. That is right. And so to me, and so anyway, so she and her girlfriend typed up this fake FBI letter to give it to Jamie Bell, her baby daddy, in order to explain to Jamie Bell why he couldn't see his son, because she was part of an investigation, an FBI investigation into Marilyn Manson. Insane. And so they had to hide out from Marilyn Manson. And so this was all exposed in court, in the court custody hearings, and Jamie Bell recently gained full custody of the kid. But this is just one example of craziness.
I want to ask you to do your best devil's advocate for both Amber Heard and Evan Rachel Wood.
It's like the idea that you're on the run from Marilyn Manson is ridiculous.
It is, well, it is ridiculous in a number of ways. And, you know, it was beyond that. She was claiming that she had to get bulletproof glass in her house, and she had to hire, there was one article where it talked about how she'd hired a Navy SEAL to to protect her.
Wow.
So,
okay, so
do you want the devil's advocate?
Devil's advocate.
Start with Amber Heard.
Okay, I'm looking forward to losing a bunch of my subscribers when I do this. Let's see.
Like, maybe what's the worst evidence against Johnny?
Okay, so some of the texts that Johnny Depp sent to Paul Bettany, the actor Paul Bettany, a mutual friend of his, after he found out, basically after all this shit had gone down with Amber Heard and the relationship was falling apart, and he found out Amber Heard was, you know, cheating with Elon Musk, etc. He wrote some rather, you know, harsh, unsavory texts where he made a Monty Python reference to burning Amber. Let's set her on fire. Let's burn her. And it was a Monty Python reference if you look at the context of it. But he talked about, he described her as a flappy fish market. So there's some unsavory text for sure.
But that's not evidence of abuse. So like, is there any evidence in that case? And I am not nearly as well versed in it as you are. Is there any evidence in that case that Johnny was abusive, or that maybe there was some mutual abuse going on?
Mutuality. Well, so there are therapist notes from Amber Heard's therapist indicating that that Amber Heard had told her that there was mutual violence in the relationship, some mutuality. And so, but again, you know, when you go to a therapist, they only know what you're telling them.
They only know your side of the
we're getting it from her perspective. And, you know, she's a diagnosed borderline personality disorder sufferer. And this is not even something that she's contesting. This is something that came out in her therapy. And so one of the hallmarks of that disorder is that they have a very skewed perspective on things.
Everything's black and white.
Yeah, everything's black and white, and everything, there's a lot of projection, and there's a lot of turning around and blowing things up out of proportion. You know, on one of the audio tapes between her and Johnny when they get into a fight, at one point you hear her on the audio saying, "Johnny, stop hitting me, stop. And then a little bit later, he's like, "I'm not." And then he says, "I'm not hitting you." And she goes, "Yeah, but when you put me in this position where you talk to me this way and you make me feel this way, it's like you're throwing me up against a wall and stuff." And so you see that she actually translates emotional outrage into physical violence in her mind. Like that's, and so I think with her, we get a lot of lies, but I also think we just get a lot of really distorted projection.
I thought the worst evidence against Johnny was the letters that he would write Amber after they got in a fight. And he was like, I'm sorry for acting like a monster. He acted like he had this alter ego who was a monster who was like at fault for their altercations. But I don't know.
Yeah, so he never admitted to any kind of violence, but there are these kinds of sort of these questionable references sometimes in their conversations about the monster. Now, he claimed in court that he would use that term to try to appease her, that he realized that the only way that he could make peace with her when they had one of these fights was to kind of concede whatever she was saying. And he has conceded that he has had a big addiction problem. And so that's probably one of the legitimate, I guess, beefs that she had with him in the relationship, is that he was drinking too much. Of course, she had her own issues as well. But no, there's just not any evidence to suggest that Johnny Depp hurt that woman. And like I said, if you ever listen to the audio, what is on the audio is her admitting that she hits him. There's an audio where he says, when it gets violent, when it seems like it's going to get violent, we have got to separate. There cannot be any violence. There cannot be any hitting. And she basically just starts berating him and making fun of him. And she says, "Oh, I was just hitting you like this. I wasn't using my fist. I was just hitting you." And so we have her on tape admitting to violence.
Like, I was just hitting you. I wasn't punching you.
I wasn't punching you. Exactly.
Right. Well, I mean, but we have to accept we're never going to know the actual truth of what happened.
Sure.
And that wasn't even the point of the trial, was to find out who was in the wrong in their abuse. It was about defamation.
Well, the defamation claim, the defamatory claims that she made were about abuse, or about physical abuse.
And it has to prove her knowingly lying about it. And I don't know if she does know. I think she's actually so unhinged that she might legitimately believe herself to be the victim of violence.
I think that if I just had to guess what's going on in her mind, I don't think that she necessarily thinks that he actually physically abused her. But what I think is going on, and this is common once again with people who have this psychological disorder, is that she interprets emotional outrage. So if he's angry or if he says things to her that she doesn't like, she interprets that almost as a kind of a violence. And so I think what was going on with her is she thought, well, he was emotionally abusive to me. So
do you think
it's
that
like
there was
violence.
Emotional abuse?
I think that there was definitely toxicity, but it's hard in these situations to unravel. Do I think that Johnny Depp at times said some awful things to her? Yes. I mean, you can even occasionally you can hear it on one or two of the audios, particularly one when they're drunk. But I've been in relationships like that before. When you're with someone who has a personality disorder, is very narcissistic, someone who's deceiving. I mean, she was cheating on him repeatedly in that relationship, having Elon Musk up to their penthouse when he was out of town. And so I think that in such situations like that, sure, there's a kind of a toxicity that develops. You're not going to speak to someone nicely all the time in that situation. But I really do think that this is one of these actual hoaxes. I think this is actually an example of a real hoax.
Do you think Elon Musk is the father of her child?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. So one of the things that's come out over the last several years, and this came out in court as well, is that Amber Heard's sister had told a mutual friend of theirs, a woman named Jennifer Howell, that Amber and Elon were involved in a fight over the fate of these embryos that they had frozen.
Sounds like something Elon would be in a fight over.
It does sound like it,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Of course, we know he likes to spread his seed, so I don't find that hard to believe.
Wait, wasn't she with James Franco too?
She was.
Yes.
She was.
She
yeah.
also brought him up to
The penthouse.
The penthouse,
Yeah,
yes.
That hotel,
But
that penthouse elevator has seen a lot of
It
people.
has seen a lot of
in the
action.
camera.
Cara Delevingne.
Yep.
As
She
well.
seemed to really not even be attracted to Johnny Depp. She
called
would
him a
tell
fat old man.
Yeah, he's like this fat old man and she like has this perceived leverage in the relationship because she's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that comment was very telling. Okay, now devil's advocate, Evan Rachel Wood.